Welcome, guys, to the memo for practical 2 for informatics. So before we get started, I just realized I didn't import the UJ grid. So I'm just going to quickly do that. So I'm going to go to my local folder, then open, then load anyways. And make sure that it's selected, and then I click OK. There we go. There's my UJ grid. So let me just remove this so that it doesn't get in the way. So I think the main purpose of this practical is just to introduce you guys to classes. So the Local Society for Puppies, SUP, has approached you to design and develop a Visual Basic application that will help the employees of the shelter home to manage various puppies they take in. So we're just making a puppy management system, basically. That's what we're doing here. So your program will need to work out how much it costs to keep their various puppies sheltered during a certain period. So your program must be able to handle any number of puppies because it's a puppy management system. So we're managing more than one puppy, as well as the number of days. So they're going to be managed or monitored, however you want to put it, on a specific number of days. So you may assume that each puppy is kept at the shelter for the same number of days. What this line means, basically means that for each puppy, when we allocating memory for each puppy, it's going to be monitored for the exact same number of days. So it's going to be like this. So for example, if I have let's say 5 puppies, right? That means puppy, and I have 5 puppies, right? And we're monitoring the puppies, for example, 4 days a week. So 4 days a week, something like that. That means puppy 1 will be monitored for 4 days, as well as puppy 2 will be monitored for the same number of days until we get to the last puppy, which is puppy 5. That means all of the puppies will be monitored for the same number of days. So that's all that means there. That means when you have this when you have these values, it's going to be the same for each and every single puppy. The number of days are constant. It's not going to be like, for example, puppy 1 is going to be monitored for 6 days a week, or yeah, 6 days a week. And then, for example, puppy 2 monitored 4 days a week, puppy 5, 2 days a week. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be constant for each and every single puppy. So we have that figured out. So let's continue reading. When a puppy is processed, the following information about them is captured. So we need to capture this following information about the puppy. So with classes, right? So with the class, okay, let me try and do something here. I want to see if, okay, yeah. With puppies, right? Oh, okay, basically with classes. So why do we need classes? So if you remember previously, you guys have been working with um, record structures. So you've been working with structures. So something like this. So you say private structure, and then you give it a name. For example, I want to create a student structure, or a structure to represent a student. And then within the structure, I'll put in the data. I'll put in the data that I want to store. Okay, this is not how you do comments in Visual Basic. So data, that you want to store for each student. So this structure is basically us defining our own data type. It's us defining our own data type. So why would you want to do that? So we would want to do that because, for example, if you check types like integer, double, string, these types, they can only store exactly one value at a time. And that can become problematic if you're trying to create if you want something that's flexible, like a data type that's going to be able to store more than one value at a time. I mean, arrays, you might say, okay, but what about arrays? Arrays, they're also good. Well, they're not good because in the sense that you can only create an array that stores exactly one type of value. So you can create an array of integers. So you would have an array of integers, right? You can create an array of only doubles. You can create an array of only strings. And that's not what we want to do. We want a data type that's flexible, that's going to be able to store different types of information. We want it to be able to store a string, a double, this and that. So that's where record structures came into place because they were flexible. You would able to define, for example, I wanted to store the student number, right? I can say student number as integer. You see, I've already defined a type, which is an integer, and I can also define a different type. So let's say I wanted to store the student name. So student name as a string. I can also, you see, now I'm storing more than one type or more than one data type for the same type. So remember that the record structure, why am I saying for the same type? We've created a student data type. When we say structure, I'm saying create a structure or create a data type called student. And then I specify the data that goes along with that data type. So now, since I have created a structure, remember what I said, we've defined our own data type. So you'd use it the same way you'd use a data type. So you'd say, remember that you can create a variable like this. So let's say num as integer, right? Because why? Integer is a data type. Here we've defined our own data type. So it works the exact same way you have been working with. It works the exact same way that you've been working with data types. So now I need to say, for example, student one, and then as the name of the record structure, it's called student because the name that I use represents my type. I mean, I've seen sometimes they can say, for example, student rec. So I actually remember it's a student record structure, but I don't see that being a necessity. You only put the rec if, for example, it's conflicting with some data type that's already predefined for you. So what do I mean by that? So for example, I wanted to create a new different type of integer type. You see, it already exists. So now it's going to complain and be like, okay, you can't do that. So that's why I would have to put, for example, a suffix called rec to represent that this is a record structure. But other than that, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna put the suffix rec at the end to say it's a record structure. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to remember my code, and this is not a type that's already defined inside Visual Basic. So I'm going to create that type the same way I've been creating variables. But then remember that now this type has things inside of it. These are the things that are inside of this type. So it doesn't necessarily work the same as this normal type because this type of storing only exactly one value. So it doesn't work the same. This one stores more than, okay, it stores one to many, basically one to infinity. That's what it stores now. You can include exactly one, No, yeah, exactly one, because why would you can't, I can't say zero, because why would you create it in the first place if you're not going to have any variables, right? So it stores from one to many or one to infinity. So now it's going to work a different way. Why do I say so? Because now you have things or data or variables within this type that you've defined. So it works differently. So let's say I wanted to initialize the value for student number. I would use this variable name that I've created here, student one. I'll copy that and say student dot, what do I want to access inside? Which variable do I want to access within the record structure? And then I say student number. Simple as that, right? And then I use it the same way I was using the normal type. So let's say I wanted to set that to 20. Done. I've used it the exact same way. So if I was using just the normal data type, I would write it like this, right? So now it's a bit different. I need to include these two things. The variable name, because the variable name, it's sort of like a way of us to reference the information within the structure. That's all there is to that variable. So I reference the information to that structure, and then how do I reference? I use this dot or this member accessor operator. It's called a member accessor operator because it's meant to access members of a record structure or a class. So it's called a member accessor operator. It's an operator, just like your plus, your minus, your division symbol, your multiplication symbol. Those are called operators. So this is still an operator. So it's called a member accessor because it's meant to access members. So this, when you define variables within a structure, we can now call them members, like your family members or things like that. So it's part of that structure. So it's a member. So I have to use the member accessor to access the specific information that I want within the structure. So now, since we have a bit of the basic understanding of what is a record structure, why did we have to create classes? So, and what are classes? So classes are exactly the same thing as it's exactly the same thing as your record structure. But now, the only difference is that the the classes, they provide extra functionality. So now you can store and data and its functionalities. So by data and functionalities, all I'm saying is that you can now store functions. That's all there is. That's like the key difference between a class and a record structure. You can now store functions within the class. Previously, you couldn't store functions within the record structure, right? You can't do that. So now we want to store functions, because let's say, for example, I wanted to define a type whereby I can create a function that gets the marks for all the students, right? So how would I do that if the type doesn't allow me to do so? For example, the record structure type, if I'm defining a type of a record structure, I cannot create functions. So now how would I create that? So that's why we have a class there. So with the class, it's flexible. I can say public, and then let's say I call it calc marks, or calc semester marks. I can have that. And then it's what I think it's as it's public. No, it's public. Yeah, you can have that function there. Yeah, let me see. You can have that public function, the calc marks as, int let's say down let's say integer, because usually your semester marks are written as an integer, and then you'd have end function there to end the function. So as you can see, it's flexible. Now I can have data and functions. That's the key difference with a class. And with a class, remember that with the record structure, as you can see, I haven't changed this. This is how we had previously declared it in the record structure. The problem with the record structure, everything by default is public. And you might ask yourself, okay, what's the problem with that? Okay, let's say, for example, public, this was your balance. Okay, this is a student. Okay, let me not use balance. Let's say your marks as an array, right? And let's say, since you guys have 10 practicals a week, no, 10 practicals a semester, that means it's gonna say 10, right? And each practical is rounded off to an integer. They don't mark it in terms of doubles and things like that. They round it off. So it's like this. Imagine your marks were public. Everyone can go to to your link, open, and be like, okay, I know this person, man. So this is what this person is getting on their practicals. Damn, hey, it must be tough, hey? You see, now people are seeing your marks public. And by public, it's even beyond just the university school. That means even a random stranger in the street can know your marks. They can know you and be like, oh, okay, I know what you're getting every week on your practicals. And that's a big problem. It it becomes what's that keyword? So you basically don't have privacy at all, and that's a problem. We need to have privacy. So with classes, by default, everything is private. So by default, everything becomes private. And then when you want to access something, you're gonna create a get statement for that, or an accessor for it. And then if you want to change, or they usually use the keyword mutate. If you want to change or mutate, or they can say set or set the, do you want to change or mutate or set the specific variable, you can create a set statement, or in some languages it's called a setter, or in some languages it's called a mutator. Mutate just basically means is to change or to set. That's a mutate. That's the meaning of mutate. It's to change something. So you can create those statements. But yeah, in Visual Basic, we call them properties. So you can just have a set property or a get property. A get property just basically means it's an accessor for accessing information, or basically a function that returns something. And then a mutator, or a set property, is basically a subroutine that sets a specific value. It's a subroutine in the sense that it doesn't return anything. So just keep that in mind. So that's the beauty of classes. Everything by default is private, and then you choose what you want to make public through property methods. You can say, okay, and these property methods, you can choose for the user to only have access to this. That means it's going to be a read-only property. You can only read the information. You cannot change it. Or you can give the user the capability of only being able to change the information without reading it. Or you can have both, where you can change and read at the same time. So that means it's basically public, the way it was in the record structure. So by default, you're making it public in the sense that you can do both operations, and we still use it the same way. As you can see, nothing has changed. It's exactly the same way we've been using our, the same way we've been doing it with the record structures. But the key difference is that it depends on the property method that you have created. So for example, let's say I create a property method for student name. I'm gonna use the keyword public, right? Because this is me trying to make it public. So public, and then I'm going to say it depends. Let's say I just only want to write I just only want to change or to set or to mutate the data. So I can make it a write only property. And then I give it a name. What is it going to be called? And the name needs to be different from this name, or else it's going to conflict. There's going to be a conflict. So most of the time, in order for you to avoid that conflict, you can just put an underscore there, and then you won't have that conflict anymore. So I'm just going to put that underscore there so that it doesn't shout at me. You'll see this in code in Visual Studio. So student name, and then as what data type should it return or should it use? I think it's a string right there. It's a string. So it's a string, and then I'm gonna have end. I think it's end property. Yeah, I think it's end property. And then you're gonna have a set statement here with the value, and then you're gonna have an end set. Yeah, we'll check the logic properly once we're inside. I think yeah, it takes in a value here. And then now we need to change, right? So this value that I'm taking in as a parameter, it's something that I'm getting externally or from the external world or from the user. That's what this value means. The value is input from the user or from someone else, but we usually call that the user. So that value, I want to use that value to set what the student name, because this is a student name property. So I'm going to say student name is equals to that value that I'm getting from the user. So let's say the user inputs their name is Bob. That's the name. That's what they're going to pass, right? So that means Bob is going to be taken and then stored inside the student name variable. So that's how it works behind the scenes. But for now, you just make it like this so that it takes in every single value. If you just say Bob, that means like I'll only be able to set it to Bob. That's a problem. So I need to take that value from the user, and then that value, I store it by using the assignment operator. I store it inside this variable. So now I can be able to do this. So when you write this line of code, what's going to happen is that it's going to say 20, it's going to say value is equals to 20, right? And then that value 20, it's going to pass it here, 20, and then take the 20 and then store it inside student name. But we need to change something here. So now remember that student number is not public, it's private. So I need to use the property name. This is how I've named the property, student name. So I'm going to come here and then do this. And then it's going to say it's equals to 20 the way it was. But then now we're no longer accessing this variable because it's what? It's private. I'm using the property method. So I use this name instead that I've created. Use that name here, and then I can only set. So remember, I only created a set method, right? So if I try to do this, let's say, for example, I say MSG box, a message box, and then I say student one dot student name, this line of code won't run. Because why? You're not meant to I only created a write only. What does only mean? It means it's the only thing you can do, write only. So write only, what can you do? You can only write. You cannot read the variable. So if you try doing something like this, yeah, it's gonna regard it as something very spiritual. It'd be like, okay, it's beyond my comprehension. I cannot understand it. What are you trying to do? Because you didn't create a property for it. So if you wanted to do that, you'd have to create a get property. So if you're in this scenario, I'm using both. Since I'm doing both, all I have to do is I just change this to just a property like this, and then I put the get statement. So get then end get. So get means that return, right? You can imagine that this is a function that returns. So what am I returning? Return underscore student name. So now you see this property, I removed the write only. So when you don't put write only or read only, it means that it does both. That's why you put both of the statements in there, the get statement and the set statement. So as you can see, get is there. So now this line would run, would work, because now I can be able to get to return and display the information. So let's do that. Let me close this, leave, and then, okay, let me close this, then close this, close. So yeah, that's introduction into classes. We're still defining our own type, but then now this type can take in data, which is your variables, and functions, both subroutines and functions. But yeah, it's typically called functions. So now we need to create a class that basically it's like, for example, they're saying create a record structure. But then now we can't create a record structure because the type that we're defining is going to require functions. So that's where classes come into place. I need to create a class now instead of a record structure. It works exactly the same way, but the only difference is that the structure cannot have functions and the class can have functions. So now let me create a new class, right? So I think I just say add. Yeah, you say add and then you go down here and then you say class. You click on class and then you choose the one with the VB at the top right corner. You see Visual Basic, and it needs to say .vb at the end for it to be the right one. And then I'm going to say happy. So the way you name your class is exactly the same way you name your classes. The same way you name your classes, the exact same way you name your record structures. It's a noun, and you don't write it in plural. Okay, let me close Android Studio. You don't write it in plural. You don't write puppies. You don't do that. And there's no spacing. You don't put spacing like this. You don't do that. You just say puppy, and that's it. You can say .vb. You can say that, still fine. You don't have to say it, still also fine. So I'm just gonna create it without using the dot extension .vb. It will know because I chose here that I'm creating a VB class. It will convert it to a VB class. As you can see at the top, it said what? .vb. So there we go. So let's create our classes, right? Our information. So what information? That's the data. We're gonna have a name, and they gave you an example, and they use double quotes. So that's going to be a string. So private. Remember what he said. Everything is private by default. So underscore name, so that we don't have issues with the properties having the exact same name as your variables. So as a string. So these are now called member variables because they are members of a specific type, specific class. So private name is underscore name is a string, and then read private underscore read as, I think it's going to be a string. So no, it can be at any other type. And then gender private underscore gender as a string. Gender can represent it in many ways. You can use an integer, you can use Boolean, but yeah, here they chose to use a string. And then age in months. So private underscore age in months, that means it's an integer because there's no 1 month and a half. We don't usually count it like that. I mean, you can, but that's not how you count it. You can say there's a second month, third month, fourth month. There's 12 months in a year. You don't say there's 12 and a half. You don't do that. So I'm gonna use an integer there. That's it only makes sense for you. We don't want to be using doubles and saying and a half and a half. Who keeps track of halves? Usually keep track of the whole month. So we're gonna use integers. And then each day the puppy is weighted to determine how much food they must be fed. How much food must be fed to the puppy. The puppy is weighted or each day. So I'm gonna have a weight array. Let's go weight array as as double. I think weight has to be a double. Weighed, and it's each day, right? That's why I made an array. I saw that keyword each day. That means there's more than one value. So I'm just gonna write here of size number of days so that I remember how to resize it when I use the keyword redeem. And then we're going to have what's the next thing? To work out how much food, you see, to work out, we are working out, these are calculations. So this is a function. So now we're creating a function. And then I'm going to have a how much food must be fed to a puppy on the day. So we need to create a function for to represent that. So how much food, right? So let me see. I'm gonna create, and functions are public by default. I mean, you could have private functions. Private functions are what we call your helper functions. They're just meant to help you reduce your code inside of your class. So we don't want to do that. We just want to create a function to display. So I'm gonna say public function, and then I'm gonna call it calc how much food how much food must be fed to a puppy on the day. So I'm gonna say calc food on the day. Yeah, because it's going to calculate the food on the day. And how much food? It says the formula is as follows: for every 500 grams or part of, if a puppy is 700 grams, 750 grams, this will count as 2 times 500 grams. The puppy weighs, they must be fed 10 grams of special food. So they must be fed 10 grams. So that means we're returning integer. Yeah, it doesn't talk about yeah, it doesn't talk about doubles and things like that. The special puppy food is sold to SAP per whole kilogram or per whole kilogram. The user will need to inform the program of this price. Is sold, let me see. The total amount of money spent on the food to feed the puppies must also be displayed. So let's see, you're gonna need to display the following information. Each puppy's name, their weight each day, the total food fed over the entire period, the total food. You must also display the total food that was fed to all the puppies. So I'm going to need to sum up for all of the puppies, and then the total amount of money spent to feed all the puppies must also be displayed. So let me see. We're gonna need a lot of functions here. So we have the calculate total food or calculate food for okay over the entire period on the day The formula is as follows. For every 500 grams or part thereof, if a puppy is 750 grams, this will count as 2 times. The puppy weighs, okay, so if the puppy weighs 1 kilograms, I think they must be fed 10 grams of special food. Okay. This is for some reason it's not somewhat clear. Somewhat clear. Okay, you may assume each puppy is kept at the shelter for the same number of days, right? For the same number of days each day. So for the weight, I'm also gonna need to create its size, a variable that stores the size of I'm gonna call it n days as an integer. This is going to be basically the size of our weight array. So from this example, seems like we're gonna have properties that do both. So the properties I'm gonna need to we need to be able to read the data because here it says you should display the information. And then you also need to set the data. You need to be able to get input from the user. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, okay, not all of them, not all of the information. Yeah, this is the tricky part. Not all of the information needs to be set to be displayed. You see, the puppy's name, so it's the name that needs to have both. The weight needs to have both. The total for okay, that's it. So the breed and gender, they need to be right only because they're not meant to be displayed. So I'm just gonna create a write only property for them. So the breed and gender, right? So breed and gender. So let's create a breed and gender property method. Both of them are going to be write only. Write only like this, and then property. I give it a name. Let's say, yeah, I don't think it makes sense for us to use uppercase letters. Like I'm just gonna use lowercase because since I have underscores now, it won't complain. So let's start with breed. Breed, that's going to be a string as a string. Okay. Okay, so it doesn't want you to create small. Okay, still conflicting. Breed. How does it want me to create it? Because let's see potential fixes. So an uppercase auto implemented can properties cannot be write only. This thing is mad. Property. Yeah, it's mad. So I'm gonna have a set. Yeah, I forgot this thing. You say value as. So the value that you're getting, you need to specify what type is going to be. It's going to be a string because this is a property method for a string. So yeah, we have that set method. Let me see now. What if I do this? Does it still complain? Okay, it wasn't actually complaining, it was just wanted me to finish writing the code. So I'm gonna use small letters, it only makes sense. So that when I say, for example, puppy dot breed, I want it to be in small letters. I don't want to have to say dot breed. You see how weird it looks. I just want to follow the same way or the same convention that we've been following with the record structures. So breed, and then I'm going to say underscore breed is equal to that value that I'm getting from the user. And I'm going to say property methods. And then I'm going to have write only for gender too, because the user is only meant to write data and not display. Property gender as string, and then end property, and then I'm going to have a set statement, and then I say underscore gender, underscore gender. I don't know why it's not highlighting, but yeah. So we have the two write only property methods, because if you check in the question, it didn't say when it's supposed to display, it didn't say display the gender and the breed. We're not supposed to display that. So I'm just going to make it a write only property since I'm not meant to display it to the user. And then I'm going to have the other property methods. So let me see if I can't do this. Um, do, 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 do. Okay. No, no. Da, 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 da. Okay, it doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't show. I wanted to generate them automatically, all the property methods for the member variables. So let's create the name property. So this one is going to have both functionalities to be able to write and read. So I won't specify here whether it's a read only or a write only. It's going to have both because I'm going to need to get user input, and then I'm also going to have to display this information to the user. So public property for the name, small letters as a string. I don't know why it's doing this. It's supposed to be doing auto completion. Then I'm gonna put a get and a set. You see, automatically it knows to put both because I didn't specify whether it's a write only or a read only. And then I'm gonna return underscore name. And then, okay, it's in uppercase. And then I'm gonna say underscore name is equals to value that I'm getting from the user. Then that's it. We have our property method. Then I don't want to have to type this over and over. I'm going to create the property method for the other one now, for the age. Okay, age is going to be age, and then return underscore age. It's going to be an integer. And then value as, I want to get that value as an integer because that value needs to match with what I have inside of my class. So what do I have? It's an age. You see, they need to match. And then need to have a, what is it, the weight, right? Yeah, the weight. We need to be able to get the weight. So I'm gonna call it weight as a double. I use the double, right? Yeah, double. And then double. Then I'm gonna say, okay, for the weight, right? I wanna get the weight at a specific index. So I'm gonna pass in an index there, index as integer, like that. So I'm gonna get back an index, And then I'm going to say, okay, let me do it from scratch like this. Then I say get, there we go. And then I'm gonna say return what? That weight at a what specific index. And then I'm going to set the weight at a specific index to be equal to the value that I'm getting from the user. So when I create a property method like this, I'm getting one weight at a time because I'm taking in an index that specifies which position in my array, which weight do I want at which position in my array. So that index helps me to index in the array and specify which weight I want. So this weight property method will be getting a weight at a time, which is going to be fine because I want to be able to do a for loop like this, that side. So for example, for weight as integer is equals to 1 to, let's say for example, n days, and then next w, and then I want to be able to say I have a puppy variable that side, and then I say dot weight because I've called it weight, and then I pass in an index. What's the current index? It's w, and then I pass in w like this because when I put this brackets, when I pass that w, it acts as a what? As an index. So that's why I'm creating it like that instead of getting the whole array. If I get the whole array, yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of do extra work. So we have our property methods. Everything is fine. Now we need to get to the calculations. So to calculate how much food must be fed to a puppy on the day, So that means I must do a for loop that goes through every single day. Okay, so basically this function is supposed to calculate the total food fed to the puppy for the entire period, for all of the days. So that's why they said he should display the total food for the entire period. Because even when we calculate it, it's supposed to calculate for the entire period, for the whole number of days, for all the number of days, basically. So let's get to the calculation. So wait, let me think about it. What I can do, I think I know what I can. Let me see. What I can do is, I think I need to change my class definition. I think I can create a constructor. Yeah, I can create a constructor. And then instead of having all those properties, but let me see, I'll think about it. We'll see when we get there. Because there's many ways to implement this thing. So to work out how much food must be fed on the day, that means for that day. So let's do a for loop here. So for I as integer is equals to 1 to underscore n days, next I, and then I'm gonna create a local variable. So dim total food as integer. Then I initialize it as 0, and then I return total food. So let's check and try to understand exactly what are we supposed to do. How are we supposed to calculate this thing? So to work out how much food must be fed to a puppy on the day, the formula is what? As follows. For every 500 grams or part of. So by part of, it means that it's part of that value. So for every grams, this will count as 2 times 500 grams, comma. Also for every what 500 grams the puppy weighs, you must feed it 10 grams of special puppy food. So you must feed it 10 grams of special puppy food. So that means for every 500 grams that's contained, I must feed it 10 grams. So if I have if I happen to have more than 500 grams, but it's not close to, it's not double, it's not like one kilograms. It's not like that, but as long as it's contained, if it happens to be contained within another value, for example 750, it will count as 2 times. So it's two 500 grams. It's gonna count as 500 grams. That means if I had 750, I must feed it 10 times 2. That means 20 grams of food. So the question is, how are we going to do that? So for every single day, I'm gonna have the weight, right? So I need to check the weight because they're saying here for every single 500 grams the puppy weighs. You need to check. You need to feed it 10 grams of special food. So what I can do is I can create a very simple, yeah, I can create a very simple formula for it. So the formula is going to be like this. So I'm going to create, this is how I'm going to approach it. It doesn't mean that that's how you should approach it, but this is how I'm going to approach it. So they said for every weight, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, for example, dim weight. I store the weight as an integer, as a double. Okay, but the weight is written as an integer here. Okay, so we need to change the weight. The weight is written as an integer. I don't know why they'll do that, but yeah. Just make sure we're following the requirements of the practical. It needs to be an integer. 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 It needs to be an integer. So what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to calculate like this. Dim weight as integer. And then I say is equals to the current weight. I, right? And then they said for every single 500 grams, right? So I'm going to do, I can do maybe a while loop. And I say while weight is, you can say while weight is not equals to 0. Something like that. It's not while the weight is not equals to 0. So and while basically the weight is not equal to 0. What I'm going to do is I can check, let me think. I can say what I can do is I can say, let me see, I think I'd have to use an if statement for this. I can say, for example, if weight minus 500 is greater than or equals to 0, then I'm gonna have an end if that happens to be the case. So that means after subtracting 500, it is greater than the answer that I'm going to get is greater than or equals to 0. So it's at least equals to 0. So from 0 to infinity. That means it's a positive value. That means this weight does contain at least 500, the value 500. Because, for example, let's say if this is 500, the answer would be what? 0. But if it happens to be, for example, 499, the answer is going to be -1. So they exactly at that moment, I can tell that, okay, this, I cannot subtract 500, right? So there's no special food for me to feed it. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say that weight, I'll check if weight minus is greater than or equals to 0. And mind you, I haven't updated this weight. I haven't saved the update, or that after subtracting, I haven't saved it into the weight variable. If I had done something like this, if you say minus or equals to, it means that subtract the weight and then change that value to the new weight. I haven't done that yet. All I'm doing is just saying get the current value of this weight variable, try subtracting 5. If that try subtracting 500, if that 500 that you've subtracted happens to be at least equals to 0, so from 0 to infinity, then what should happen? Then it means I can feed the puppy special food. So now I can say weight minus equals to 500. And this basically means the same thing as saying weight minus 500. But this is like the shorthand of it, or the shortcut to writing that. So after subtracting, I'm going to say total food plus equals 10 grams, right? Then I'm going to do that. And then once it's done with the end if, it's going to go back to the condition and check. Is the is the weight not equals to 0? If it is, then let me see, let me think, let's think about it. Let me think, because now, okay, this formula is fine, but the problem is that they said if a puppy, let's say the puppy weighs 750 grams, that means that it's going to count. I'm going to count the 500 grams. It's contained or part of. So if that 500 grams is part of another value, then I must just say times 2. So it must actually become 20 grams, something like that. So let's try to reconstruct the formula. So I'm going to say if I subtract weight and let me see, if I subtract 500 from the weight and it's equals to that, yeah, there's many ways you can implement it. There's like infinite ways. So what you can do is you can add another statement, an else if statement. You can add another else if statement. So this is for the case when we are able to subtract, right? So we are able to subtract. So what I can do is, okay, I can have an else. Let me have an else. The else means that this value was a negative value. So if this value is a negative value, let me think. Then they say we had 750 grams, right? Let's say we had 750 grams. Weight, let's say weight was equals to 750 grams. It will come here and say that 750 minus 500, and then 250 will be left. No, it will update here. 250 grams would be left. And then I'm going to try and subtract whatever's left there. Let me see. While it's not equals to 0, right? So it's not equals to 0. Okay, so let me just do an else if. I'm gonna say if when I try to subtract, right, I try to subtract 500 and the value that I get happens to be, for example, yeah, for example, less than 1 or less than 0. I think I should say less than 0, because let's say, for example, you had 1,000 grams, basically 1 kilograms, right? Which is basically 1,000 grams, right? It's going to check this one. Can I subtract? Yes. Is it greater than 0 or at least equals to 0? Yes, it is. And then subtract, and then I'll be left with 500. Then it goes back, it checks, is the weight still not equal to 0? If it is not, remember that now I'm left with 500. 500 minus 500 is 0. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm able to subtract. And then it continues going going on and on and on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say if that happens to be less than 0, if it happens to be less than 0, what I'm going to do is okay, it becomes very tricky, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to create another variable and say current. This is current, right, as an integer. To store the current weight, because I want to subtract that current weight from itself. What do I mean by that? So for example, you had 750 grams, right? The first try, it's going to subtract 500, right? So it's going to subtract 500, and then you'll be left with 250 grams. Now what I want to do is I want to subtract that whatever I'm left with, that current value. I want to subtract it from itself so that I can get a value of 0. And so that this while loop can what? Exit. It's going to check here. Is it not equal to 0? It's going to be false. And then it's going to go to the end while. So I want to subtract that weight from itself. So I'm going to say weight, and then I'm going to say I stored the current weight, right? And then I'm going to update the weight. Say weight is equals to weight minus current. So what this will do is just going to say, for example, if I'm left with 250 grams, subtract 250 grams. That's what it's going to do. But then remember that they said it also counts as special food. So I need to also add that extra 10 grams. Because as you can see here, they said if you have 750, it counts as if you have two 500. The the puppy weighs two times 500 grams. So that means I must feed it an extra 10 grams because they said for every 500 grams that you have, you must feed it 10 grams. So this will be my logic. And then I'm just going to copy this. And then I'm going to add it inside here. It's not weight, it's underscore weight. And then there we go. This is our algorithm. So for example, what would happen is that, let's say, for example, I had 1,000 grams, right? 1,000 grams. It was going to check, can I subtract 500 and get a value that's at least 0 and above? If the answer is yes, then we subtract and then we update that weight variable because I used the assignment operator to update this weight to be the answer after subtracting 500, which is going to be 1,000 minus 500, which is 500. And then total food is going to be plus 10. And then it goes here, it checks. Because remember what the if statement does. If you have an if statement and then you have an else if, it looks for the first true statement and then it immediately jumps to the end if. It skips all the other ones. It looks for the first true condition. The first true condition that it finds, it's going to go to that and then skips the rest. If it failed to find, I think it would look for the else. Yeah, I think it will look for the else. Okay, so I don't necessarily have to do this. I can just make it an else because if it's not greater than 0, it's going to be what? Negative, right? So it's going to be less than 0. So I can just change this to an else to simplify my code. So I can change that to an else. So this is just going to be an else. And then there we go. So let's say it's done, right? It's going to subtract. Let's say we had 1,000 grams. It's subtracted, right? Now we're left with 500. It goes to the end if. And then it goes back to the condition and checks. Is the weight not equals to 0? If it is, it's going to continue because this while loop runs as long as the weight is not equal to 0. So that's why here I had to subtract the weight from itself so that I can get a value of 0 so that this loop can stop. So now it's going to, the current weight is 500, right? It's going to go back and check, is 500 not equals to 0? Yes, it is not equals to 0, so it continues executing. It checks, can I subtract 500 from that current value? The current value is 500. And you can subtract it and get what? 0. 500 minus 500 is 0. And then I subtract that 500 from the weight, and then I add 10 to the weight. So let's say he had 1,250 grams. What is going to do is going to work perfectly fine. It's going to take that weight. I'm going to subtract 500 twice, right? And then I'm going to be left with 250. And then it's going to check, can I subtract 500 from 250 and get a positive value from 0 to infinity? No. So it's going to go to the else part because this condition happens to be false. So it's going to go for the for any next branch statement. It could be an else if or an else. At this moment, it's an else because it means this condition was false. If it was false, then it means that I have a value that's less than 200, that's less than 500 grams. So all I need to do is just get the current weight and then say that current weight and store it in a variable called current. Say that current weight, let's say in this example is 250, right? And remember here I stored 250. So it's going to say 250 minus current. Current is what? 250. So it's just basically going to say 250 minus 250, which equals to what? 0. And then it's going to check here, is weight not equals to 0? False. It is actually equals to 0. And then it ends the while loop. So yeah, that's basically how I would have approached it. So yeah, and this is for the weight per day. So I'm gonna start with the first weight on the day 1 and then check, do a while loop. And then go to weight for the second day and keep adding 10 grams. 10 grams of special food. Done. We are done with that function. So the special puppy food is sold to SAP per whole kilogram. So you sell it to SAP per whole kilogram. So that means it has to sum up to 1,000 grams basically. The user will need to inform the program of the price. So you're gonna need to get the price for this, the price that you're gonna multiply it per kilogram. So I'm gonna need to store that price there. Okay, that's the problem with this, with the way they're creating these practicals. Because now the way the way they've used the data types, for example, the weight, they use an integer, but the weight we all know that it's going to be a double. So now it becomes tricky in terms of the price. But me, I'll just use I'll use a thing. I'll use the, I'll use, what is this? The double data type. And then it says it must be sold, right? So sold, that means okay, the total food that was displayed, that was whatever for all the puppies. Yeah, we're gonna calculate that inside our form. Let's see. The total money of food spent to feed all the puppies. Okay, special puppy food is sold to SAP per whole kilogram. So let's create a function that does that. So I'm gonna have a public. Yeah, let me create a function. So function, I'm gonna have calc total calc money spent on food. So we're calculating the money spent on food. So, okay, let's just use integers because, yeah, I don't want to have to do this thing of rounding off and stuff. So let's just use integers for this. So the price, we're gonna assume the price is gonna be an integer. So I need to add the price here. So private underscore price. We assume the price is going to be an integer. And then I need to create a property method for it. But yeah, with terms of property methods, we're gonna get back to that because I still need to create a constructor. And but the way I create the constructor will depend. Well, it depends on, it'll give me a choice whether I'm gonna use, I have to change some property methods. So let's see, okay. So it's sold per kilogram. How would we calculate that? So that price, it's a price per kilogram. So since a price per kilogram, it means that I need to take what I currently have, the total that I have, divide it by 1,000, and then multiply it by that price because it's the price per kilogram. I think that's how you can do it. Yeah, I think you can. That's how you can do it. Yeah, you can say you take that total, you divide it by, yeah, you divide it. It's the price per kilogram. So if I have 1 kilogram, I times it by that price, but pay that kilogram. Yeah, I think that's exactly. I think that has to be the formula. There's no other way I can think of calculating this. So yeah, I think that's how you can calculate it. So if I had 2,000 kilograms, 2,000 grams, which is basically two kilograms, and then per kilogram, right? So I divide it by 1,000, and then that answer, this is going to be, goes in twice, and then that answer, and then the price per kilogram is like 15 rand. So this means it become 30 because I happen to have 2 kilograms. Yeah, I think this is the correct way. So even if you have 50, you just divide it by 1,000. So that's how we're going to calculate it. So I'm going to take that price and then I'm going to take the total, the food on the day. I don't know whether I should take, yeah, I think I should use the food on the day. Let's see. Per whole kilogram, right? So that means I'm going to use this result. So since I'm going to use this result within this class, and I'm not, let me see, let me think about it. And I'm not going to use it inside of my main. Let me see, total food fed to that puppy for the entire period. Yeah, that's what that thing does. That function does. It calculates the total for that one puppy for the entire period. That means for all the number of days, because I use the what a for loop that goes from 1 to the last day. So that's the value we're going to have to use, and then divide that answer because I want to calculate per kilogram. And it says we need to display it. So okay, I'm gonna keep it private. I'm gonna keep it public. because we need to display it. I was thinking of making it private. I didn't think we're gonna have to use it in our main. And then display the total for all the puppies. So that means I also need to use it to find the total for all the puppies. And then I'm gonna need the total money for all the puppies too. So that's fine. So let's calculate the money spent on food just for one puppy, right? So I'm just gonna say dim the total food. Okay, I don't have to do that. All I have to do is, oh, so since I'm dividing by that, I'm gonna make it a double. Remember that I need to divide by 1,000 because it's per kilogram. So what I'm going to say return this answer that you're gonna get here. I mean, you could use the mean dot, you could do that, but you see, it can be simplified, it's not necessary. Basically, the me command, this me command, it means that my current, in the current instance of this class, the current instance of this class. And what do we mean by an instance? An instance is a variable of which the data type is the same as the name of the class. So for example, this class is called puppy, right? So I create a variable and I use the puppy name, puppy class name as my data type. And I say puppy. Okay, I say puppy like this, right? So obviously it's gonna be puppy private puppy as okay, I need to have puppy there and then puppy. So let's say I declared it like I created it like this, right? So that's this is now it's no longer just a variable. It's now called a class instance. It's called a class instance. I can say it's called a class instance because with the class, right? What basically the class does is that the class it's all about the class is all about, for example, the class is like a template, it's a blueprint. And then when you create the variable, this variable, you've created an object, basically a manifestation of the blueprint or of the plan. So you can imagine the class is like our plan to build a house, right? We have the size, how big we want the house to be. We have the colors, everything that we have, that's the plan, that's the class. And then when we create a variable and then we use the class name as the data type, now we are basically creating the object itself. We are using the plan to build the house. So now we are creating the house, or we've created the house. So in that sense, you can call it a class instance or a manifestation of the blueprint. The blueprint is being used to make the actual product. So let me see. Actually, I don't like using doubles. We're gonna cast it to an integer. No, we're gonna use integers because that's how I'm seeing it from this practical. They're using a lot of integers. You see, they're using a lot of integers for things that don't require an integer. So since we're gonna have to cast, I'm gonna use the option strict on. Yeah, that's the only one I'm gonna need here. The rest I'm not gonna need, because I'm gonna need to cast, right, my answer. So I'm gonna say this divided by 1,000 by a gram, by 1 kilogram, and then I'm going to cast it. I call C int. I cast it to an integer, but what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'm not gonna cast this. I'm gonna cast the answer itself. So I'm gonna convert the answer. So let me do this. So divided by 1 kilogram times the underscore price, right? But if you don't if you don't put brackets in the right way, in the right place, right, it's going to say, for example, in this example, what it's going to do, it's going to say, because just think of it in terms of BODMAS. If you remember BODMAS, BODMAS. So I think they say, yeah, this is how I was taught. It's brackets off. So you start with the brackets, you remove the brackets, right? And then followed by division, multiplication, and so forth. So you just always need to keep that in mind. But for some weird reason, this thing sometimes can make mistakes. So in terms, if you want to group it in the right way and tell it what to calculate first, you put brackets so that it follows. Remember that it follows the BODMAS approach. So I'm gonna put brackets here and say start by calculating this, divide first, then multiply by the price. Because if it was something like this, if I had said add, it was going to start by multiplying because the multiplication is higher priority over the addition. So that's why I'm just emphasizing this thing of brackets. So you need to put brackets. In this scenario, it would be fine, it would work, but just normalize putting those brackets. So this is going to be my whole answer, right? So what I'm going to do, I want that whole answer converted to an integer because this function returns an integer, right? So I'm going to convert this whole function to an integer. So cint, the whole result, I mean, and then boom. So that's how it's going to calculate. So what's going to happen is that it's going to prioritize. These brackets are going to be evaluated first. It's going to get an answer. Let's say it's 2,4, 2,5, whatever, and then it times it by the price, and then we cast that answer to an integer. So you need to make sure you write it something like this, exactly like this, if we are using an integer. But yeah, I think we're generally using an integer in this practical. So this is the money spent on food, just on that puppy alone, not the total. The total we're just gonna calculate it in our main or in our form. That's what you guys call it. So what I'm going to do is when I'm do this, and then I'm gonna have information for a puppy, right? Because it says that's what we must display, right? And if you haven't noticed, you've been using classes this whole time. Look at this, public class form one. So you have been using classes all the time. So just keep that in mind. You have been using classes. So let's design this thing, this form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tweak it a bit. Where's this? Where's this? Is it here? Um, okay, let me not let me not think about that now. Let me just do this. Yeah, there we go. So I'm gonna have to drag and drop buttons so that they can be functionality they can be I can have functionality for my application. And then then I'm gonna do this. Enlarge the buttons. Yeah. Okay. That should be fine. Then I copy and paste. Paste. I don't know how many buttons I'm supposed to have, but for now I'm just gonna copy and paste. And then I'll delete the ones that I don't need. In this example, in this practical, you don't have to do things like ratings and whatnot. So I'm not gonna require a text box. Yeah, I'm not gonna require a text box. So I mean, okay, I think I might in terms of the total and what. So let's think, which side am I going to use to represent the puppy information? So I'm going to say let's say mm, yeah, let's say the rows, that's where I'm going to display the puppy information. And then the columns, that's where I'm going to say puppy 1, puppy 2, puppy 3. Yeah, you get the idea. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's do that. Let me go up there and add my option statements, option strict on, option explicit on, option infer off. And then I need to name my buttons, right? So I now need to describe what each button does. So, and we're gonna have to fix our class. So let me see. Let me think about it. So I'm gonna have a variable right here, and puppies for the number of puppies as integer. And then I'm gonna have another variable for the puppies array and then the name of my class, puppy. And then every puppy, I'm going to say new, and then get the information. Yeah, I'm going to create a constructor for this. So what is a constructor? So public sub new, if I'm not first to remember, yeah, it's public sub new. So basically what this means, remember that what I said about this class. So the variables now that you create, remember that we have puppies, right? Well, let's say we had puppy as puppy. Remember that we're using it the same way we were using a record structure, right? So you can imagine, let's say we have a puppy record structure. So now the only difference is that now with classes, it follows a different philosophy. So a different approach. And remember that with the class, it is both data and functionalities. So both variables and functions. Whereas a record structure only had data, it only had variables. So with that being said, so that means when you're creating a variable of 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 a specific class type, it's now called an object. It's a complete object. So it's an object in the sense that it's like you're literally making the puppy. So that's why I was saying that the class, when you're creating a class, it's like you're making a blueprint, a plan of something that you want to build. What do you want to build? For example, in our example, we're building a puppy, but it's like a puppy management system. So you're gonna, yeah, puppy management system. Or yeah, basically the puppy. I'm building the puppy. So it's the same, that's what's really going on. So in order for the puppy to be built, or in order, for example, when you're building a house, in order for the house to be built, what do you need? You need builders, right? People who are going to build the object or the house, right? So that's where the constructor comes into place. So the constructor is basically the builder. It's a synonym for builder. That's what it means. So that's why you need to have a constructor every time when you create this object. And what happens is that it gets created automatically if you don't define it in your class. So for example, this is how you'd create a puppy variable. You'd say is equals to new puppy. So what new puppy does, it's like, this is the constructor, this keyword new, that's the construct, that's the builder. The builder builds a puppy for you. It builds the puppy object. So that's why we need to have a constructor. So if you don't, you see here, I'm able to use it without creating my own. So if you don't create your own, what happens is that it's just gonna create some puppy. It doesn't have any information or anything like that. If you wanted to, you can specify that, okay, I want this puppy to take in some information here, some parameters. So this parameters is like, for example, imagine they're building a house for you, and you decided to give them the specifics of how you want the house to be. So you want the house to have you wanted to have a blue color. You wanted to have fitted in wardrobes. You wanted to have a kitchen unit. You wanted to have tiles. You wanted to have this and that. So you are defining what you want as defaults into building your object, right? Into building your puppy. In our example of building a puppy. So here you'll be specifying what you want to take in order to build the puppy. So this is what you're gonna take in. The variables. Remember, we have the variables. That's the information about the puppy. All of this is what you're gonna take in from the user. Except for the array. The array, yeah, we don't want to be passing values for, yeah, that's a very complicated thing to do. So you're just gonna pass everything else except arrays. You don't pass arrays here. You're just gonna pass everything else except arrays. So here you'll be specifying, okay, I want to give it a puppy name. I'm gonna pass in a breed. I'm gonna specify the breed. So you choose. It's like you're going there to buy a puppy. Okay, I wouldn't say to buy, but yeah, it's actually making a puppy. So you can imagine it's like, okay, you go to a science lab and then you tell them, okay, build me a puppy. And then this new or this constructor or this builder builds a puppy for you. They make the puppy for you. You give them the name. You want it to be called Rex. And then you specify the breed. What type of breed of dog do you want? Do you want a Chihuahua? Do you want a pit bull? Do you want, yeah, whatever breed you want. And then specify its gender. What type of gender do you want it to be? What age? Remember that this is like you're creating sort of like a genetically modified puppy, right? So you're specifying, you're telling the scientists or the builders, the scientists in that example, they act as the builders. You're telling them, okay, you want it to be of this age, of this breed, and this should be the name and things like that. So that's another approach of using the constructor. Or you can just have defaults. So by default, it means that we don't really care. You just want a dog. You just want a puppy. So you're not going to provide there's no requirements that you want. You don't want a specific puppy. You're just going to take whatever puppy that you see. You just love all puppies. So yeah. So we're going to create our constructor, but our constructor is going to be taking in this information. So when it takes in this information, basically what happens is the same as setting. So it's the same as doing this. When you say value, gender is equals to value. It's the same thing. So we're gonna do that. So I'm gonna teach you some feature that this thing has. So this feature works like this. So I can create variables with the exact same name, like this, right? Then underscore breed as a string. So I'm just gonna use the underscore breed. Okay, for now, let's remove underscores. Let's say you didn't want to use underscores. It's perfectly fine. You can do that. And then you remove underscores here, you remove underscores. So the first input is going to be the name, right? So for example, and this is, you can imagine it's like this, right? And then you're gonna pass in a name, a breed. That's how we've specified it. But after the constructor, you need to tell it what to build. Build a what? A puppy. So that it knows that this constructor is coming from the puppy class. So I'm gonna take in a name and a string or whatever. So now let me set is equals to that name that I'm getting from the user. So now you might be wondering, you might have a very compelling question, right? You might be like, okay, Mara, why is it named the exact same way? Okay, if it's named the exact same way, won't it get confused? Yeah, and the question is true, it will get confused. That's where the me comes into. You say me dot is equals to whatever the other name is. So, okay, it's ambiguous. This kind of members, then this name exists in class pub. But yeah, you do it like this. You'd say me dot name and then is equals to that other variable. So the me, what basically it's saying is like take me in this class, basically my variable, me, and then set it to whatever the other value is. So that's how you could use it. But for some weird reason, it is complaining. I think it does. I think it does require, doesn't need the underscores. Let me see. Okay, let me do this. It shouldn't force me to get the underscores. Let me do this. Mean that I don't know why it is complaining, but it shouldn't be complaining because with the me, it basically distinguishes between the two variables. Now it knows, okay, this name you're saying is the one that's going to be passed as a construct via the construct, and then this one is the one that's mine. This is my variable, which is the one inside of the class. So that's why they typically use underscores to avoid having to do that. So that now it knows the exact difference. You see, when I put an underscore, it knows this one is the one within my class, and then the other one is the one that I'm getting from the user. So remember that, what are we doing here? Aren't we setting the values? We are setting the values. So since I'm setting the values via the constructor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now make these other variables read only because this is now useless. I don't need this. I mean, you can, yeah, I'm gonna use this approach. The other approach is that you decide not to have the constructor at all. You just use the default, the one that you're given, and then you access using accessors. That's the other approach. But I'm gonna use a constructor in this example. If you want to see the other example, we can do that maybe in practical 3's memo. So underscore breed is equals to the breed from the user or the breed from the construct, and then followed by gender as a string, and then followed by lastly, we're going to have an age, comma, age as a string. Here, I just want you guys to get familiar, become familiar with constructors. To get used to using constructors. Okay, age is an integer. Yeah, not a string. So as you can see, I'm already setting here. So the other ones, I don't have to make them set. So I'm just gonna make them read only. So I'm gonna remove the set statement and then make them read only. It's read only because I need to read them, right? The user needs to read them. That's part of the practical requirements. And then let's check the weight on each day. So we also don't read the age. So since I'm neither gonna read the age. No, okay, I'm gonna set the age, but I won't read it. So I'm not gonna have this property at all because I'm setting it via the constructor when the object is created. So yeah, even these ones, I'm not gonna have them the right only. I'm not gonna have them. So now I'll be left with two things. With the weight, yeah, the weight I'm gonna leave it like this because yeah, it's an array, it's a bit complex. I can't be passing it via this. Because if I pass it via the constructor, it means that every new value I need to keep on instantiating. You see, I need to keep on calling the constructor over and over, which is something that you shouldn't do. You can't do that. So I also need to take in the number of days. Remember that I need to take in the number of days to redeem or to resize the array. So n days is equals to the n days that I'm getting from the user. And then now I redeem, I resize my array. Underscore weight is equals to, you can use either one. You can use n days or underscore n days because you have access to them. You're within the construct, right? So I'm just gonna use underscore n days. You can also use n days. It's still fine. Just be consistent with the method that you're using. So we've instantiated, we've gotten the values from the user that we want. And then we created property methods for reading because remember that we need to read. We need to read the weight on each day. We need to read the puppy's name. So that's the only two things we need to read in terms of the data, in terms of variables. So yeah, now we are done doing that. And then, so here I'm going to call this button. Yeah, I knew something was missing here. What is it called again? It's not a solution explorer. It's a properties window. Yeah. Yeah, the properties. Because I wanted to change this background to a color blue. So back color, I want the back color to be blue, something like this. Yeah, this is what I this is what I wanted to do. So okay, let's change this to give this form a name. So this is called Local Society for Puppies, SUP. That's the name I'm gonna give it. Scroll down. Wait, this is okay. This is not this is where you say FRM. So FRM SUP. And then where's there's the name and the what again? What is it called? It's the name. Let me see. And the text, yeah. So what's the text that's going to be displayed there? It's Local Society for Puppies. Okay, let me do this. Let me resize all of them at once. These buttons, select all, then resize all of them. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Yeah. And then the first button, what it's going to do is what text? Let me set the text. It's going to be initialize. Initialize. Let me see. Initialize. What is this? What am I going to say? Initialize arrays. Yeah, I'm just going to call it initialize arrays. Yeah, I'm just going to call it initialize arrays. I don't have any other name. Then this one, I'm going to call it user input. So I'm going to call it get user input. And then scroll down, name btn get user input. And then I'm gonna double click the buttons, double click button, and then initialize, right? So we are initializing. So I need to get two values, the number of puppies and the number of days. So I'm gonna say n puppies is equals to c int input box, enter the number of puppies. And then n days. Yeah, I'm gonna need a variable for that too. Because in my class, I'm expected to have the value for the number of days. So I'm gonna have enter the number of days, right? And then I have the number of days and the number of puppies, right? And then now I need to set up my grid, right? So with my grid, let's see, what are we getting on each day? What information are we getting? The weight, yeah, the weight on each day. So remember what we said. We said we're going to display puppy 1, puppy 2 as our columns. So I need to create a setup grid. I need to create a function. It's a subroutine? A subroutine for placing the text in my UJ grid. So it's going to take in a row R, I'm going to say R as integer, and then comma by value C as integer, and then comma by value T as a string. And then I'm going to give my grid a name so that it's easier for me to reference it, because at this point in time, I don't know what it's called. So I'm going to look for it. It's called UJ grid 1. So I'm going to call it UJ grid puppies, GRD puppies. And then I'm going to say GRD puppies dot row, not rows, the row. So GRD puppies dot call is equals to C, and then GRD puppies dot text is equals to T. Then we have our place text subroutine, right? So now we're done. So now in terms of my columns are just only going to display puppy 1, puppy 2, and so forth, right? So that means my columns are going to be equal to the same number of puppies that I have. So I'm going to have GRD puppies dot rows is equals to n puppies plus 1. Plus 1 is for column 0, so that I don't start displaying column 0. GRD puppies dot calls. The column is going to be equal to the number of days plus 1 for the default. No, I should have said calls. Yeah, and then rows. Yeah, it's going to be equal to the number of days plus 1, but I also need to display the puppy's name and the total, and this total, and then the total money. So I need to have, remember the weight is weighted on each day, so that's the number of days. So plus the puppy's name. So puppy's name, I'm going to add a 1. Then the total to be fed, that's an extra 1 plus 1. And then the total food for all the puppies, that's another plus 1. And then for the total amount, that's another plus 1. So that's going to be 3, 4, 5 plus 5. And then I have my rows and columns. And then now I'm going to put the labels into my grid. So I'm going to say let's start with the rows. So for R as integer is equals to 1 to n puppies, right? And then next R, and then I'm gonna say place text to place the text in my grid, that specific row, and then the column is column 0 by default, which is the heading, or the header there at the top. That's row 0. Should be row 0, and then column should be that R. And then the text should be puppy followed by space plus, and then I convert to string to index what's the current puppy. So there we go. So if I run this, it should Okay. This the new Visual Studio has this issue. So I need to say FRM. Is it FRM puppies or puppy? What did I call it? Or FRM sub. So FRM sub. And then start. So if I initialize the array, let's say I want 8 puppies, that's going to be 8 columns. And yeah, there we go. You see. So we have puppy 1, puppy 2, puppy 3 up until the last puppy. So we have that. Go back to my form. We're done displaying that. So now we need to display the name of the puppy in we need to display the name of the puppy here. In this first in row 1. This is row 1. So I need to display that. So row 1, column 0, right? I need to display the okay, I need to display the puppy name, right? Okay, so the puppy name I'm gonna get from the user. So I'll display that as I'm getting from the user. So for now, we're gonna skip. Okay, let me see. I don't think I should edit. Let me think about it. If I edit here, it's going to become a problem. So, okay, what I would do is for now, I'm going to display puppy 1 and puppy 2 and so forth. But when I'm getting the puppy names, I'm going to replace those puppy 1, puppy 2 with the actual puppy names so that the user, because that's part of the requirement, right? It should display the puppy names. And then each puppy is going to have each puppy is going to have the specific details related to it. So yeah, and the weight on each day. So I'm going to start, that means I need to subtract 1 here from the rows and only say +4. Then I'm going to display for the rows, right? I'm going to start at row 1. Then I'm going to say, okay, so let me use I. For I as integer is equals to 1 to n days. I want to display day 1, day 2, just the same way I displayed puppy 1, puppy 2, and puppy 3. So I'm going to have place text for every single row. So I'm going to put the I there in column 0. And then what text do I want to display? So day, they said weight on each day. So I can say weight day. I can say the weight, right? Weight, and then I specify which day. Then convert to a string and pass the current index I to specify that that's the current day. Remember, this loop goes from 1 to the number of days. So now I'm done with that from 1. So now I need to continue from the last. This is the current last row, right? That's the last row that I displayed. So I'm gonna say n days +1 to continue after that last row. What do I need to display? Total food, uh, total food for that puppy. So I'm gonna say place text. What's the current row? Is going to be n days +1 immediately after the last row. Still column 0. And then I'm gonna say total food. And then I'm gonna have another one called total food for all puppies. Yeah. So now I must also display total food for all the puppies, right? So I'm gonna copy this, paste text, and now it's +2 to display immediately after this. Remember that it was +1, and then to display after that, I just add an extra 1. So the 1 + 1 just evaluates to 2. I mean, total food for what? All puppies. I just need to put that there so that the user knows the difference between these total food labels. Which one is for all puppies and which one is just for one puppy. And then the total amount spent. I'm gonna have, now it's +3, and then I'm gonna have total amount. And then that's pretty much all I need to do. And then if you try running it, let's say for 4, there we go. You can see, right? Total food, all puppies, and then total food, and then there's total amount at the end. So it's the weight at day 1, weight at day 2, weight at day 3, weight at day 4. And then let me see. Can't you expand the spacing between between these values? Let me see. I want the text to be readable. Let's see. Let's try auto size. Now, okay, it's already false. Oh, the auto size means that the number of rows and columns. So it's false. That means you can change it to be your own rows and columns, your own number of rows and columns. Come on. I don't know where to display it. So what I would do is I'll just do it like this. Say all puppies with no spacing. Okay, this one total font is fine. This one I just write it with no spacing in between. Okay, maybe I can just do it like this. Total, and then I say all, which basically means for all puppies. For all puppies. So we are done with that. Now it's time to get input. So in terms of input, I'm gonna go through all of the puppies, right? One puppy at a time. Okay, I'm not done. There's something that I haven't fixed. The puppies array, I haven't resized it. So I need to resize it. So redim puppies to n puppies. Right? Done. And then now I need to go through all the puppies. For puppy as integer is equals to 1 to n puppies. Next puppy. And then now I'm gonna get, before I get input, right? Okay, remember that I'm gonna need to instantiate the puppies, right? I'm gonna need to do this. This goes to new puppy. But the puppy expects all these inputs, right? In days we already got the value for n days. So the other values, what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to do this before I instantiate it, or I allocate memory for each puppy. Or basically create a new puppy object and every single index. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the inputs. So I'm going to say dim name as string, and then I say is equals to input box, right? Enter the name for puppy, and I specify what's the puppy number. So P is the value, and then what else does it expect? It expects a breed, so dim breed as a string is equals to input box, and then enter the breed for puppy, and then you specify what puppy it is, and then I'm gonna have, what's the other thing? The gender and age. So dim gender is a string, is equals to import box, enter the gender for puppy, specify the puppy number as it is stored in the variable p. And then I'm going to have dim age, that's an integer. Integer is equals to import box. And then I'm going to have enter. Okay, that's an integer, so I need to use cint. Import box, enter the age for, or age of puppy. And then I specify the puppy number. Then now, since I've received the values from the user, and mind you, it's within the for loop because it's for every single puppy. Now, since I've gotten the values from the user, now I can set them, set the name, the breed, age, gender. It's name, breed. Let me see. Oh, it's name, breed, gender, then age. So gender is here, gender, and then breed, and then no, not it's gender and then age, not breed. Age and then the number of days. I've already gotten them from the user, so there we go. So what I'm saying here is I'm saying create a new puppy. And then this is what I want the puppy to, how I want the puppy to be. I want it to have this name that I'm getting from the user. I want it to be of this breed. I want it to have this gender. I want it to be of this age. And I also taking the number of days so that my weight array can be resized. And remember, when you use this keyword new, what happens is that it calls this construct. So everything that's here gets implemented. These values that I'm passing here, they're going to be stored under underscore name, underscore breed, underscore gender, age, and so forth. And we'll also resize the what? The weight array. And then now, since I'm done, I've resized the weight array, right? Now I'm going to go through all the weights. So for weight, and of which it's based on the number of days, right? So I'm going to say n days, and then next weight. Okay, let me say D for days. D, there we go. And then remember that I have a property method for it, for the weight. So I can read the weight and I can set the weight. So we can do both. So the same way you'd use it with, you'd use this with the reconstruction. You say dot, and then you say the thing that you want to access is the weight. And it even shows you where it is. It's puppy.weight. It's a private, it's a public property method. It even says it's a property method. So dot weight, and then I select it, I pass in the index. And then for that specific weight, and then I get from the user, I say is equals to, and then I say import box, enter the weight for puppy, specify what puppy it is, and then on the for the day, I can say for day, yeah, for day, which day, and then plus convert to string, I pass in the current day there. As you can see, enter the weight for puppy, and then I specify the puppy number, and then for which day for day, and then I specify the day number so that the user doesn't lose track of the values that they're currently inputting. And then now, what I need to do is display this information, right? So the information that we're supposed to display is the name. We do have a property method for it. There it is. I can read the name. So I'm gonna display the name. Okay, so before we do that, I'm gonna do this here after instantiating the object or creating the object. Instantiating the object. So after instantiating the object, what I would do is I would display the information, right? So in terms of the name, it's for every single puppy. So that means that every single column. Remember, we started by displaying puppy 1, puppy 2, and so forth, right? So it's at row 0, and then the column is the current puppy. So the current puppy, and then I display the puppies. I use the puppies variable, and I say dot name. And then you see, it allows me because it can be accessed. If you try to access the private ones, it won't work. It's gonna complain. So let me say dot underscore name. I don't know if it's gonna tell you. Yeah, it does tell you. It is not accessible in this context because it is private. So that's the nice thing about classes. By default, everything is private. And then you limit the level of access that the user has on each variable. And then now we need to display the weights. So the weights, it's for every single row, but in column 0. So place text every single row. So I'm gonna pass D there, column 0. And then what is the puppies? I need to convert that to a string. And I do have a property method for the puppies. So dot weight as integer and then D. It allows me to do this because I'm allowed to access the weight. So let's say I had made it a read only. No, not a read only, a write only. So you can only set the data. So let's say I made it a write only. It wouldn't complain in that line whereby I am setting it. You see, I'm saying it's equal, so it doesn't complain. But then when you try to display it, you can't because I didn't create that functionality. So that's just something very important to keep note of. And then we've displayed all the weights. That's it. We are done doing that. And then now we need to do our calculations. So the first calculation is the total food over the entire period for that puppy, right? So for the entire period, it means that so when you're done going through all the days and so forth, we do have a function for that, for all the days. Is it total food or the money? Okay, the total food. So I need to call this function. Remember that it is public, so I can call it. So I need to display that. So place text in which, because row and column, okay, it's n days plus 1, and then column 0, and then I display the value, right? So I'm just going to convert it to a string, and then I say puppies, then dot calc food on the day, right? Like this. And then it's missing a closing bracket. Yeah, there we go. So now I use this function and I return it returns an answer, and then I display that answer at a specific row and column. But I need to display it for all the columns, not just at the column 0. That's where the label is. So I don't want to do that. I want to display for every single column. And the puppies are stored in every single column. So I'm going to use the puppies variable, which is P. So for every single column, display this value. In which row? In that row, for every single column. And then we also need to display the total food that was fed to all the puppies. So this is after after I'm done with this, so I need to display the total food, right? So what needs to happen is I need to calculate it. So I need to say dim total food as integer is equals to 0. So for all the puppies. So I need to calculate for each puppy. I need to call this function. I can call it anyway after or before, but within the for loop for going through all the puppies. So I want to say total food. This is for all the puppies, right? Plus or equals to that food, the food that I get there for that current puppy. And then I add it and it keeps adding for all the puppies because this for loop stops at n puppies. And then now we are done doing that. Now we can display it. So I can say place text. Okay, for all the puppies, I think it wasn't necessary for us to display it there. I think it was supposed to be, yeah, it's for all the puppies. Yeah, it's for all the puppies. Let me think. It's for all the puppies. You can either use a text box or you can display it at the end. So let's use a text box instead. So I'm gonna remove this. Then change this to 2, and then subtract 1 there. Yeah, and then I'm gonna use text box for that. So I think at most I'm gonna have 2 buttons. Yeah, at most I'm gonna have 2 buttons. Then I'm gonna take in text box. Okay, there it is. Oh, okay. I think I should be in a separate button to make it easier to understand. It's gonna be in a separate button, but I do calculate it there. I mean, you could separate it, it's fine. You could calculate it separate, but I don't want to have to rewrite the for loop. So that means the total food, I'm gonna have to make it a public variable. So I'm gonna have to create it here, total food, and make it public. Make it accessible to all the buttons within the form. So this will be calculate. It's going to be called what? Calculate total food. Yeah. Come on. Calculate total food. Then in brackets, I'm gonna say all puppies. And then here is gonna be TN total food for all puppies. Then I'm gonna change this to a multi-line text box so that it can display properly. Yeah, and then I'm gonna do this, change it to a read only. So this is gonna be txt total food. And then I'm gonna change this to a read only. I don't want the user to be typing. Read only, change this to true. So it can only be read. As you can see, it changes color. You can only read this information. You cannot change it. So it's like that property method those property methods, it's like a read only. So calculate. Yeah, so that calculate button, I'm gonna click it so that I can add code for it. That calculate button, all it does is just say txt total food dot text is equals to, then I convert to a string, total food. That's all it does. Just displays the total food. And then we're gonna have the total amount spent to feed all the puppies. I'm also gonna make that display that using a text box, just to make things simple. Then I copy this. Yeah, and resize. It's called what? Total amount spent. And I call it calculate total money spent. BTN total money. Total, didn't spell the money correctly. Money. Then the text box is gonna be txt total, just txt money. Txt money. Keep things simple. And then for this one, I'll just actually do the for loop to calculate the total money from 1 to n puppies, and then the next puppy. And then now we need to calculate total money. The function that we have here, it only calculates for one puppy. So that's why I'm doing a for loop for all the puppies. So dim total, just gonna call it total is equals to 0. And then total, and then I'm gonna say plus equals to, and then I use the puppies variable, the way we would use it with record structures, and I say dot calc money spent on food. So it just sums up for each puppy. And then at the end, you need to display the txt money dot text is equals to, and then I convert to string the total. Then that's all you need to do. So let's test it out. Initialize array, the number of puppies, let's say 3. Then days, let's say 3. 3 by 3, right? Get user input. Enter the name for puppy 1. Call it Rex. Then enter breed. Then I'm just gonna write something there. Male. Age. Yeah, as you can see, it changed the name there to the name that I provided. And then the weight on that specific day, right? So I'm gonna say, and the weight is in terms of 500 grams, something like that. So I'm gonna say 500 first. Okay, I think I didn't display it properly. Remove that. Was thrown. Why would it throw that exception when? Let me see how I used it in my, I think it was because of, since I was doing things a bit fast. Let's see. So there it is. It's the weight. Oh, I need to change this to a P so that it displays for all the puppies, not just the one puppy. What could be the issue? The weight is fine though. I said weight. I can access it. I can set it. and it's an integer. I am entering integers though. Let's try it again. 3, 3. And let's cancel. Yeah, I just wanted to crash that I can cancel. Then 3, 3. The name, correct. Read. Just write something. Say 32. Weight. Okay. Complains about the weight. Say 5 foot. Why is he complaining about the weight though? Exception of type. Stack Overflow exception was thrown. Okay, let's try and debug and see what the issue is. So let's see the call stack. Let me do this. So line 38, that's the line. Why is it complaining about the index though? Let me check something here. I did take in the number of days, there they are, and then I resized it. So when I instantiate this puppy, it gets resized. Basically, we redeem it. Dot weight should be fine though. The specific index. Then value as integer from the user. Then weight is equals to that value, that specific index. Oh, I see the issue. Yeah, I didn't put the underscores. So I'm reusing this property method and it expects a value. Yeah, that was a silly mistake. Okay, so 3, 3, and then made age just any number. 400, as you can see now it's fine. 500, 200. There we go. It calculated the total food. Yeah, it calculated total food. Then next puppy breed, female. Then age 3, weight 800, 200, 100. Name of the puppy, just anything. Then the age 12, weight 500. So the answer for the last one, the answer should be 8 because they said for every single 500 grams the puppy weighs, it must be fed 10 grams of food. Here we go, that's fine. 80 is indeed correct. So let's see this one. So this is going to be Let me see. Yeah, okay, this is fine because this is going to be 400 plus 200 is 600. 600 plus 500 is 1100. So there's two 500s there, but they said if it is contained, so there's that extra 100. So it must count as 10 grams. So there's 30 there. It's correct. And then total food for all the puppies is just going to be 30 plus 40 plus 30, which is going to be 100. It should be 100, right? Yeah. And then money spent, I think it depends. Oh, wait, I see why it's returning 0. It could be 0 point something. Yeah, let's use a double. Let's not convert it to yeah, let's not convert it to an integer. Let's use a double. Because I think I know what the issue is. It could be 0 point something, the answer. And 0 point something, when you convert that to an integer, it just converts that to a 0. So let's use that double. And then in terms of my calculations, I'm going to have an error there. So this needs to change to a double. And this needs to be equal to 0 0.0. Then we calculate again. Initialize arrays 3, 3. Get user input rex mail 10 weight 500. That's 10 grams, right? And then another 500. That's also 10 grams. And then say 1,000. That's 2 gram. That's 20 grams. So it's gonna be 40. The total should be 40. Yeah, it's correct. And then that's the name. And then breed some weird. And then 12 again. Don't know what to write. 400. And then 500. Then 600. Let me think about this one. Okay, still the same. I'm gonna say 600. Let me say 50. So it should be, the answer should be 20. Should it be, should it be 20? Let me see. We left it 450. So the answer should be 20 there. Should have been 20. I mean, so there's a flaw in my formula because it's going to be 450, right? So 450 minus 500, that's negative 50. So it's already less than 0. And then subtract and then add a 10 and then return. Yeah, there's a flaw there. So breed, enter the breed, blah, blah, gender, age, weight, 900, 500, 500, 40. Let's think about that. So yeah, this is correct. It's gonna be 40. This is 10. This is 10. That's 20. Subtract 500 here. That's another 10. That's 30. Be left with 400. Since there is a remainder, that 400 counts as another 10. So that's 80 plus 10, which is 40. Then this one, let's check. It's gonna be 5. It's gonna be 650, right? Yeah, 600. No, 950. And then you subtract 500, you be left with 450. And then that 450 should count as just 10, but it's displaying 30 there. And then 40 plus 40, that's 80. There's going to be 110. That should be the answer. Total amount, it's what? Am I not calculating it the right way? I think I am calculating it the right way though. How money spent on food? There's the function, money spent on food. Oh, I see the issue. I didn't get the price. Damn. I just literally forgot about that. So I need to add the price here as integer. And then I'm gonna have underscore price is equals to price. Because yeah, it's multiplied by 0, it's always gonna be, yeah, it's always gonna be 0. 0 times any number is just 0, right? So yeah, it's gonna complain when I instantiate the object because now it's expecting that extra parameter that I just added right now, which is the price. So with the price, I think with the price, it's the same for all puppies. Yeah, it's the same for all puppies. It's just the price per gram, right? So I'm just gonna get it at the, I can get it here. Yeah, I can just create it here. Dim price as integer. And then C and input box, enter the price per kilogram. And then I pass the price. And then now it should display. So in terms of my formula, I think we need to fix it. Let's see. It seems like it isn't really doing the right thing. I think I should say, all I should say is that it's just that if it's greater than 500 grams, I think I should have that if statement. If weight happens to be greater than or equals to, happens to be greater than or equals to 500 grams, then I should subtract. Yeah, I should. Yeah, I think this is more logical if I write it like this. If the weight itself happens to be greater than, it's at least 500 grams. And then the else part, okay, let me just cancel this. And then the else part is basically when it's less than 500 grams, right? It's less than 500 grams. So if it's less than, that means that value still counts as total food. Total food. So it means total food plus equals 10. But that means now the weight should be equals to 0. So that this while loop can end. Yeah, that while loop, so that while loop can end. But if okay, let's continue. So let's think about this. If I have 750 grams and I subtract 500, okay, that weight happens to be greater than or equals to, it's at least 500. That means I can subtract 500 grams. That's going to be 10. And then when that value now becomes less than this, yeah, that thing, this should be perfectly fine. Yeah, I think now it's 100% perfect. 100% correct now. So let's test it out. So the price per kilo, let's say 15. Yeah, I'm just gonna use 15. Then the weight, 500, 300, 40. So It's not quite right. It's not quite right. Let's see. For every, if a puppy must be fed this, their weight on each day. Oh, okay. So before we calculate, I think the important thing is to sum up the weight first. I think my formula was fine, but it was working, it was working in a way, in such a way that we don't really sum up the weight first. So what do we need to do, right? Still the same thing. We're still working the same way, but now I need to have a dim weight total. So the weight, I need to have a weight total as integer is equals to 0. And then all I do is I say weight total plus or equals to weight. And then I have the total weight for the puppy. And then I use that. Because now what's happening is that it's checking for every single weight. So it's checking for when it's like, for example, 40 grams, 200 grams, and then counting saying 10. Yeah, that's not how, I don't think that's how we should be calculating it. I think now it should be fine. So we should sum up its weight for all the days, then we start calculating. So get user input, and then I'm going to say 10 per grams, and then rex, and then breed male 10, and then the weight, I'm going to say 700, and then I'm going to say 300. That's going to be 20 grams because that's 1,000. That's 1 kilogram. And then I'm going to say 200. So as you can see, it should be 30 because, yeah, because I'm going to get 20 grams and then I'll be left with 200 grams. And then that also counts as another 10. So 20 grams plus the other 10, that's 30. And then breed, and then age, just going to enter any value. And then the weight, I'm going to say 100, right? And then 50, 500. And then breed, gender, age, weight. Okay, I should be entering big values there. 200. Yeah. So this is now fine because 500, that counts as 10 grams. And then the remainder, it counts as another 10. So that's 20. And then this is 900, that's 500. So that's 10 grams. And then you'll be left with 400. 400 plus 200, that's 600 minus 500. You'll be left with the 100 grams. That's another 10. So that remained 104 because it's going to be 100 plus this 4. That's another 10 grams. So they should be giving you 30. And then 0.8. And then that's it. That's all you had to do for this application. So you let me know if you guys have any questions.